Hi everybody, it's Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio. I am getting ready to work on a new project, and this project reminds me of the very first quilt that I ever made, so I want to show you that quilt. First thing I want to show you is what I'm making this from. These are embroidered quilt blocks that I've made over the past couple of years. They were given to me from the estate of a couple that had belonged to our church, and their daughter was going through their things, and she had dozens of these blocks, and she gave them to me. So I took some of them and I hand embroidered them, and then I gave a lot of them away. But in the meantime, I did embroider 6 of them myself, and I kept the ones that I finished. And so anyway, I want to show those to you, and I want to show you the first quilt that I ever made. Okay, here's an overall view of the quilt. This is it's a full size, between a full size and a queen size quilt, and I only have half of it pinned up because it's too long to fit lengthwise on the board, and I didn't feel like I really needed to pin everything up anyway. So I want to show you part of the back of it too. And I know it's hard to see much detail from here. I'm halfway across the room in order to get the quilt in, but here you can see a little bit of it. You can see the embroidered blocks that are alternating with some solid blocks, and I'll get you up close so that we can look at it in a little more detail. Okay, I made these quilt blocks in 1974, and they're hand embroidered, and the whole quilt is hand quilted. I was 15 years old when I started this. I was 17 when I finished it. And the story behind these blocks, these were bought at, I think, Ben Franklin in our store, Ben Franklin store in our town. I was getting ready to have a spinal fusion surgery, which is pretty serious, and back then the treatment was pretty primitive. They do the surgery, which is a long drawn out surgery. You're flat on your back for days in intensive care. They put you in a body cast. You're still bedridden for 3 to 4 months. For me, it was 4 months. They put you back in the hospital for a week. They put a new cast on, a new body cast, and teach how to walk again, because your muscles are weak at that point. So then you're in that cast for 3 months, put you back in the hospital. They take that cast off, and then they give you a corset, and then you wear that for another 3 months. So it's a lot different today now. Of course, they don't keep you bedridden, and you're up and walking within days after the surgery, so it's a lot different. But my mother knew she needed to give me something to do to keep me busy, because I was a 15-year-old and going to be bedridden for 3 to 4 months. And since I embroidered and knitted and crocheted and that kind of stuff, this is one of the things that she got for me, was these blocks to embroider. So I embroidered all of those when I was on bed rest, and then over the course of the next year and a half, I added the alternate blocks, and then I hand quilted it. Now, this is the first quilt I made. I was a teenager. There was no instructional classes on TV. There was no internet, so no YouTube, and so I had to learn by books. And quite frankly, I learned from books of fiction. I didn't learn from instructional books. Well, here's a closer view of one of the embroidered blocks, and you can see on the embroidery where some of it has worn through. It's gone. It's just been from over time it just got worn, and even some of the quilting is missing, and that is just from time. Now this was hand quilting thread, so it was the correct thread, but you know, this quilt is 40 plus years old, so, and it has been used. It was the quilt on my bed for decades, and you know, I just wore out. We use this now. My husband uses it when he goes camping and that kind of thing. So some of the French knots are missing. Some of them I may have forgotten to do, but I think they have just kind of pulled through. So you know, that just happens to quilts over time. Also, I don't know if you can tell, but underneath the cross stitch, let's see if I can zero in on this. All of these blocks are pre-printed, and supposedly that ink fades out over time with washing. Well, I think you can see it there. See the blue marks in there? Especially right, but I think you can see it in there. So it really doesn't fade out over time. That's not something that it does. So those blue lines will be there forever, as well as the pencil lines of what I drew in for the alternate blocks. Now the fabric in these alternate blocks is a polyester, and I had bought two stencils at Ben Franklin again, and one was this star with the little leaves on it, and then one was this wave, and I can still see the pencil lines underneath here because I didn't know any better, and I used a number 2 pencil and drew in my quilting lines. So as I said, I learned all of this through books of fiction, and my mother did eventually buy me a book on how to quilt, but you know, it was just a little pamphlet. It wasn't very detailed, so I just had to kind of make things up as I went. The binding is pulling loose, or the blocks are pulling loose from the binding, so it needs to be rebound. And the quilting, the quilt batting, this is a polyester batting, and it's, you know, over time polyester compresses, because this was a high loft batting, and it is probably less than what a cotton batting is today. It's just, there's just no loft to it anymore, and that is just typical of polyester batting. So you know, that it is what it is. I did not stitch in the ditch around anything. There's no stitching in the ditch. I didn't know anything about that. You know, this was before rotary cutters and PBS quilting shows, as far as I know. I know it was for the rotary cutter. I don't know about the PBS shows. I don't know when those first came out, but I believe it was before that. You know, this is 1974 to 1976. This is when the quilting craze kind of regenerated, and you know, it was the bicentennial years here in the U.S., and doing everything kind of colonial style. You know, quilting was back in fashion, and people were, you know, there was a surgence of quilting again. So that was, I didn't even know it. My mother, her sister did a lot of embroidered quilts, but they were like whole cloth quilts, and this was just another segment of those whole cloth quilts, was just buying the blocks. And I wanted the quilt big enough to cover my bed, so I got fabric that matched, actually it kind of matched the blue in here, but it's really faded over time. So I just made the alternate blocks. I didn't know anything about matching seams, and so my seams don't match up everywhere. Some places they do, but you can see in here how those seams right there do not match up. you know, I just sewed things together, and however they came out, that's how they came out. I also didn't know about filling in space with quilting, so there's a lot of unquilted areas that could really use some quilting. And but you know what, this quilt was usable. I mean, it's still being used today, and this quilt is 40 plus years old. So the binding also, one other thing I wanted to point out was that binding I sewed with the sewing machine on the top, and I pulled the backing from the back and folded it over, and then just seamed it down with my sewing machine. So stitches, my quilting stitches, you can see how large these are. These in this one aren't too bad here, but you know, you see they're getting longer, and that's because I was getting towards the edge of the quilt. I was really tired of hand quilting, and I realized the larger my stitches, the faster it went. So I made really large stitches towards the end, so I couldn't even tell you what the gauge is of that. That's maybe 2 stitches per inch, 2 or 3 stitches per inch. It's not very, there's not very many stitches in there. So that is my first quilt, and I still have it. I kind of lost it for a while. I didn't remember where it was, and my husband said, "Oh yeah, I have it," and he had it in his hunting and fishing stuff. He had it all folded up nicely in his cabinet, so it was safe. I just didn't know where it was. So that's the first quilt. So these embroidered blocks that I'm doing remind me of this quilt. So I have these blocks, and now I need to decide what I want to do with them. So here's a, let's see if I can get closer. So there they are. There's one of them. And on this one I chose just 3 colors for the embroidery floss, and just the purple, pink, and green. Made it kind of simple, and I only have 6 of them. So this will be a small quilt, and you know, I haven't decided if I want to do alternate blocks, or if I want to put sashing between, or if I want to put piece block between them. I haven't decided yet, so I'll get around to that. This is Jack Dempsey needle art. I have no idea how old the actual blocks are. Like I said, this lady passed away probably 10 years ago that had these blocks, and I don't know how long she had them. It could have been, you know, 20 years or more. So I don't know how old they are, and I don't know if you can buy them at this point, but I think you can still find these embroidered, these pre-stamped blocks that you can embroider. So there's that. Another thing, if I do alternate blocks, do I do white fabric, or do I do a colored fabric? You know, what would look best with this quilt? That I don't know. I think I may try a couple of different things and see what I like best. So if you have any suggestions, put them in the comments below, and that'll help me out. I hope you enjoyed getting a little bit of a close-up look of the first quilt I ever made, and seeing all of the things that I did wrong and all the things that I've learned over the years, as well as looking at the new embroidered blocks that I am working on to come up with a layout and a way to finish off that quilt. So I hope you liked this, and if you did, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to click that notification bell so that you'll be notified when the next video comes up. And in the meantime, I hope you're all staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links, and to keep up with my latest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.